What if the computer was a beautiful object, something you want to look at and have in your home? And what if, instead of it being in the right hands, it was in everyone's hands?
We'd be talking about the most tectonic shift in the status quo since
Ever.
Hello, welcome to Premier Scene. I'm Claire Bueno, where we can safely say job done as we attend the closing night gala of the 59th BFI London Film Festival with Steve Jobs.
I'm begging you to manage expectations.
Have I ever let you down?
Every single goddamn time.
Then I'm due.
Your Apple stock is worth $441 million. And your daughter and her mother are on welfare.
She's not my daughter!
You must be able to see that she looks like you.
We will know soon enough if you were Leonardo da Vinci or just think you are.
You're the only one who sees the world the same way I do.
no one sees the world the same way you do.
Steve Jobs was clearly a visionary, so did you have a personal vision for this film?
Yes, I mean, you kind of...
Touched upon it.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. He gets accused in the film, somebody says to him, well, Seth Rogen playing Steve Wozniak says to him, you're not an engineer, you're not a designer, you can't compute, you don't do code, what do you do? And of course, you feel like that sometimes as a filmmaker, because if the camera's broke, I can't fix them, and I can't act, and I can't do makeup or anything like that. But you kind of try and have a vision of something that you then, all the people who do have those abilities, you synthesize their talents towards that one focal point. So I'm not comparing myself to Steve Jobs, believe me, but there are some similarities to his job to what film directors do. And he was a great storyteller, of course, a great myth maker. And so that's one of the interesting things about doing a story of his that doesn't obey exactly what Apple would like you to believe about him. It actually is independent from these huge companies and actually tells its own story, which we didn't compromise even when we had studio trouble. We kept to our belief in the story as Aaron wrote it.
Everyone is waiting for the Mac.
What are people going to do with it?
It's an abstract.
They're gonna do that?
You're issuing contradictory instructions. You're insubordinate. You make people miserable.
What was exciting about your character is that we see Steve Jobs' inability to really form friendships and bonds. Is that how you saw your character?
I know that Andy had said to me when I was speaking to him that he had to accept Steve on his own terms, But they had a great respect for each other and a great love between them. And I think even though Andy went off on his own journey, Steve would always sort of come back into his life. I know they cared a lot for each other.
And you're such a wonderful actor who just is a chameleon. He disappears into a part. And I wonder how your technique differs from portraying a fictional character to somebody that really existed.
When I'm playing somebody who actually lived, you have to sift through that information as rigorously as you can and try to glean as much as you can about who somebody was, how they lived their life, and whether or not you get to use all that information is another story. Whereas if you're playing somebody fictional, the sky's the limit, and it could be anything you want to create. I love both challenges. Both are thrilling, and this was an unusual one in particular because I got to meet the person that I played, and Andy sort of came in and spoke to us at the beginning of the process and spoke to all of us, spoke to me, and then took me out to Palo Alto to hang out with him and his wife and see the world in which he lives, and he couldn't have been nicer.
And obviously working with Danny Boyle as well, he seems to be a director who's a great collaborator.
Absolutely so, absolutely. Impresario-like is what I call him. He seems, can spin a million plates at once, and he's always checking in with everybody. He's very aware of everything that's going on and very much a part of rousing everyone towards the vision. But he's extraordinary.
The board believes you're no longer necessary to this company.
I sat in a garage and invented the future. Because artists lead and hacks ask for a show of hands.
I wanted to ask you, the wonderful thing about your character is and relationship that we see with Steve Jobs is that it allows us to see Steve Jobs' backstory, that allows us to maybe empathise with him more. Is that how you saw your character as well?
Character of Scully or?
Through Scully, yeah.
Yeah. he was the guy who hung in there with Steve, his creative genius and his visions, and he left people in his wake, and Scully hung on, and Scully was one of the guys who told him no, who said, no, you don't get to do this, we're going to stay with the Apple II and not the Mac, and in hindsight it was not the decision long term, but short term it was, and Steve never forgave him for that, so you really got to see the disintegration of a guy with a great reputation ended up having his reputation ruined, and at the end of the movie he's standing there. He went from like a CEO, father figure, power figure, guy who could help Steve change the world, to a guy who probably just spent the day walking his dog. I mean, he was broken, and John's done well and come back from that, but it wasn't easy.
What you make isn't supposed to be the best part of you when you're a father. That's what's supposed to be the best part of you.
I'm the only one who knows that this guy is someone you invented.
With regards to working with Michael, there was obviously a dysfunction between the relationship between you. How much did you work together on that, to work on a backstory?
You know, we didn't really work together on it. I mean, of course, I'm sure you know, we rehearsed and then went in to shoot the first act and then stopped and rehearsed again and so on. But, you know, we both kind of went in, I think everybody in the cast sort of went into their own corners, did all of their work, and then kind of wanted to bring that work into the scene, you know. It's sort of like if you were in a boxing ring and you went over to the other guy and you were like, then I'm going to give you a left hook and then I'm going to like knock you out. You know, you're not going to tell him your moves, you know what I mean? And so I think it's sort of more fun in a way to not know what the other person's going to do, and you can play together and surprise each other.
In the moment.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? Because the camera picks up on that, doesn't it?
If you watch his work, he has a kind of intensity that's like obvious. I mean, it's a ferocious intensity. That was very Jobsian. That's what we were told. People said, make sure you get the stare right, because that's all they could remember of him if they'd been on the receiving end. But more than that, it's that Michael is he also has a very witty side, Michael, as well. There's a touch of the Cary Grants in him, I think. But he is uncompromising in the way that he approaches his subject matter. He's not going to compromise because the studio head says, can you make him a bit more likeable in that scene where he destroys somebody? Can we just have a bit more likability? This is the favourite word they like using. Michael would not entertain that. And I think you need that. Jobs didn't entertain that as well. You had a focus, and that was your job to make people see it, come to life in front of you. And Michael does that as an actor. And I mean, he has enormous range and talent as an actor. And I think this film shows you just how extensive that is. Anyway, so he's a very special actor, yeah.
Seems incredibly brave, actually. Brave of him.
Of Michael? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm sure he thought sometimes, what am I doing? Because he did take on basically 3 months of absolute ferocious concentration, and his approach as an actor is to relax, so all the work has to be done beforehand, and then he can actually just relax in front of the camera. So yeah, I'm sure he regretted it some days, but I'm glad he didn't. I'm glad he finished it.
Thank you, Dan.
Is there a plan?
The plan will reveal itself to you when you're ready to see it.
Great project to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, who's going to say no to an Aaron Sorkin script and a Danny Boyle film starring Michael Fassbender and Kate Winslet?
And it's obviously a story about Steve Jobs, who effectively was behind us approaching music in a very different way through technology and just how we listen to it. Was that any kind of thought in your mind when you approached the score?
Yeah, I mean, I think Steve Jobs' actual impact on creativity is huge, because I think before he was around, people looked at computing as very dry. It was for accountancy, it was for databases. And he was the first guy with influence to sort of recognize the artistic potential of computers. And, you know, I write all my stuff on an Apple computer. I use Apple software, and I'm a kind of from his generation. When the Macintosh came out, I was 6 years old. So I've grown up through his revolution, and it allows me as an artist to express myself in so many different ways. And in some ways, this score is hopefully a great testament, because I can jump from being a synthesizer noodler to someone writing an opera to someone doing digital sound design. And the computer allows a tool, like he says in the film, as a bicycle for the mind. It allows you to just be bigger than you could be before.
And I imagine as well, Danny, being the kind of visionary filmmaker that he is, would allow you that creativity as well.
Yeah, I mean, Danny is a fantastic collaborator and director to work with. And, you know, right from the beginning, he's always pushing me to do it different. You know, the Think Different slogan for Apple was so relevant in this film because we were always trying to think, how can we do this score differently? And so I came on right at the beginning, before they'd even started shooting, script stage, and would just be firing out ideas. Loads of crazy ideas, loads of them go in the bin, but some of them stick. And it's the ones that stick become the score. And that way you get to experiment more, you get to try out more things. It's like making 1 million prototypes before you make the one iPods.
And also, I noticed as well, Bob Dylan's music plays a key role in the film. Did you listen to that at all and gain any influence from that?
Yeah, I mean, as everyone sort of knows, Bob Dylan was a massive impact on Steve's life. Early on, I looked at trying to do a more guitar-y kind of bass score, but it was one of the early experiments. It didn't seem to work properly with the pace of the story. But I think the songs just work fantastically in the movie.
Well, it's happening.
The comeback of a superstar.
Co-founder Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs is returning to Apple.
Two most significant events of the 20th century. The Allies win the war, and this.
Ladies and gentlemen.